Alright, hello guys. Today I'm going to show you guys how to build a computer from the ground up. First thing is the parts. Now what you guys are going to want to do, you're going to want to research your parts very thoroughly. Start with your motherboard and your processor, because those two components will decide what the rest of your parts specifications will be. When you've selected your motherboard, take a look at its specification sheet. This will tell you everything else you need to know. What kind of RAM you're going to have, how much power you're going to need for it, type of video card you should get. First thing you need to consider on this specification list is the case. That case will have a form factor. Most motherboards use ATX or micro ATX form factors. Personally, I would go with an ATX because it's much more standard, and you can find cases that have the power supply with them. So they will always be the proper size power supply. The best way to buy a motherboard and processor is to buy them in a kit. Very often you can get a motherboard that comes with the processor pre-attached. Then you don't have to waste any time with thermal grease. You don't have to worry about breaking off the plastic connectors that are extremely fragile. And it just ends up being a much better experience because it'll be compatible for sure. The next thing that you're going to need to consider is your hard drive type. Now your motherboard specifications will tell you exactly what type you're going to have. You'll either have the ribbon type connector, which is called a PATA connector, parallel ATA. That is most common. It's a lot older. It also has a lot of drawbacks. Now, what most newer motherboards will come with is what is called SATA, that is serial ATA connector. Instead of having a ribbon with 16 wires in it, you will have one wire that travels 1 bit per second, actually per nanosecond, at a much faster rate, and it just allows for higher RPM and higher data storage and better performance out of your hard drive. Your first step will be to slide or place the motherboard where it should go. Now this will be designated by rivets that are standing up from the bottom of the case, or rather the side of the case. This is very obvious for me because it is a slot design and it just slides right in. You can see where it goes in. As soon as you've got your motherboard in place, then you're going to want to go to your optical drives, your hard drive, and I'm using a floppy drive. Now since I'm using this particular case, it will slide right in, and I will not need to use any screws or anything to hold them down. You will, but you'll be able to see this pretty easily. So I'm just going to slide mine in, and this is what that will look like. Alright, as soon as you've got these drives in place, what you want to do is you're going to want to check your connectors. Now, always, almost always, the black end of the connector will be to the component. Now you'll place these, and a good way to know is that the longer end of the ribbon that is unbroken will be to the motherboard. Safety tip: you always want to make sure you follow proper electrostatic discharge procedures. This can be a couple of things. If you're building a brand new computer, you're going to want to make sure you have an anti-static wrist strap that is clipped directly to the computer case. Make sure it's metal that you're connected to. Also, make sure you disconnect this bracelet when you turn on the computer. If you don't, you will become part of the computer's ground. You will have about 800 watts of power running through you. It's not pleasant. Now, the last thing is you want to make sure that all of the connections inside the computer are tight. Alright, the next thing we're going to tackle is the power supply. Now, all the connectors, there's only a couple of them that have to go to a specific place. There will be a 20-pin connector. Now, all of these are keyed, mind you. That will go directly to the motherboard. It can't go anywhere else except to the motherboard. It will be keyed so it can only go in one way. All of the rest of the connectors, they will be labeled either P1, P5, P6. All of those, it doesn't matter exactly where they go, as long as you have one grouping to the group of drives. Turn it on and see see if it boots up.